Have you ever wondered why certain memories feel like anchors in your life? Moments so vivid, so emotionally charged, that they continue to shape the way you see yourself even years later? What if I told you that the story of your past isn't just a memory, but an active force sculpting your present identity and even predicting who you will become tomorrow? This is not just poetry. It's neuroscience, psychology, and the hidden blueprint of human growth. Stay with me until the end of this talk, because understanding how your memories silently guide your choices may unlock a deeper power within you to consciously design your future self. If you've ever asked, why am I the way I am? Or, can I truly reinvent myself? The answer lies in the way your brain holds on to the past. Every human being carries an invisible library within their mind. This library is filled with stories, images, and fragments of time, what psychologists call autobiographical memory. These are not just facts stored in the brain, but experiences layered with feelings, smells, colors, and lessons. When you recall the first day of school, a childhood birthday, or the sting of failure, you're not only remembering what happened, you are also reactivating the emotions tied to those moments. And here's the most fascinating part. These memories are not passive. They actively participate in constructing who you are today and who you will become tomorrow. From a neuroscience perspective, two key regions of the brain are at work. The hippocampus acts as a memory archivist. It encodes, stores, and retrieves episodes from your life. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, serves as the interpreter, weaving these episodes into a coherent story about you. Together, they form the foundation of identity. Imagine if your brain was a movie director. The hippocampus provides the raw footage, while the prefrontal cortex edits it into a meaningful film. Without this system, you wouldn't just lose memories. You would lose the very sense of continuity that makes you feel like the same person across time. But memory is not perfect. It is not a photograph. It is a living, reconstructive process. Each time you recall a moment, your brain subtly rewrites it, blending facts with present emotions. This means your identity is not a static reflection of the past, but a constantly evolving narrative. Think about it. A painful rejection you experienced as a teenager may once have defined you as not good enough. Yet, years later, recalling that same event may empower you, reminding you of how much you've grown since. The memory didn't change, but the meaning did, and that shift reshaped your self-perception. Psychologists often describe memory as the glue of identity. Without it, our sense of self would fragment into disconnected pieces. In fact, patients with severe amnesia, such as those studied in clinical neuroscience, often lose not only their ability to recall personal experiences, but also their capacity to imagine the future. Why? Because envisioning tomorrow depends on the same mental machinery as remembering yesterday. The brain reuses memory circuits to project forward, simulating possible futures by drawing from the raw material of past experiences. This means your ability to dream, plan, and set goals is directly tied to the way you store and retrieve memories. Autobiographical memory also influences your values and decision-making. Suppose you grew up in a home where kindness was celebrated. You remember your parents praising you when you helped a sibling. Those memories don't just sit quietly in the background. They act as unconscious motivators, making you more likely to value compassion as an adult. Conversely, if your childhood memories involve constant criticism, you may carry a heightened sensitivity to rejection, shaping how you interact in relationships or pursue career goals. In this way, memory is not only a record of your past, but also the blueprint of your future behavior. There's also the role of emotion. The amygdala, the brain's emotional center, is deeply intertwined with memory. This is why emotionally intense experiences, whether joyful or traumatic, are remembered more vividly than neutral ones. Neuroscientists call this emotional tagging, where strong feelings burn a memory deeper into neural circuits. And here's the striking implication. The memories that shape you most are often the ones you couldn't forget even if you tried. These emotionally loaded snapshots influence your self-concept, your fears, your dreams, and the standards by which you measure success. Research in developmental psychology further shows that the stories we tell ourselves about our memories form the backbone of identity. A child who recalls their first piano recital as, "I was nervous but brave," grows into an adult who sees themselves as resilient. Another who recalls the same event as, I embarrassed myself and failed may grow up with self-doubt. The facts are identical. The interpretation makes all the difference. This narrative construction of self explains why two people with similar pasts can walk away with radically different futures. The story they tell themselves becomes the script they live out. Even cultural differences affect how memory shapes identity. In Western cultures, autobiographical memory tend to emphasize individuality. This was my achievement, my struggle. In Eastern cultures, memory is often framed collectively. This was my family's experience, our journey. Both styles of remembering shape how people define themselves, influencing whether they see the future through a lens of independence or interdependence. All of this leads to a powerful truth. Nostalgia and memory are not about living in the past. They are about building a bridge between who you were, who you are, and who you are becoming. When you revisit your memories, you are not simply indulging in sentimentality. You are sculpting the raw material of your identity. And whether you realize it or not, those moments are silently guiding your choices, your ambitions, and your vision of the future. But here's a question worth pausing on. If memories shape who we are, can we also use them as tools to consciously shape who we want to become? The answer begins with understanding nostalgia, not just as a sentimental feeling, but as a psychological mechanism. Most people think of nostalgia as daydreaming about the good old days, but in reality, it is far more powerful. Psychologists describe nostalgia as a self-regulation strategy, a way the mind stabilizes itself in the face of stress, uncertainty, or change. When you feel lost, lonely, or disconnected, your brain often calls up warm, emotionally rich memories to remind you your worth, your connections, and your continuity across time. This isn't accidental. It's the brain's way of using the past as emotional fuel for the present. Take, for instance, moments of failure. Imagine you are struggling in your career, feeling inadequate and doubting your ability to succeed. Suddenly, a memory surfaces. The first time you overcame a difficult challenge in school, or perhaps a personal victory that seemed impossible at the time. That recollection doesn't just bring comfort. It actively changes your emotional state. Research shows that recalling nostalgic events increases self-esteem, fosters optimism, and strengthens a sense of meaning in life. Your brain, in essence, is reminding you have overcome before and you can do it again. This is not living in the past. It's borrowing strength from it. Nostalgia also plays a key role in building resilience. Studies in positive psychology reveal that people who regularly engage in nostalgic reflection often report higher levels of psychological well-being. They are better equipped to handle stress and recover from setbacks. Why? Because nostalgia reinforces identity coherence. When life feels chaotic, remembering who you are provides stability. It reassures you that there is a narrative thread connecting your past, present, and future. That thread becomes a backbone of resilience, keeping you anchored when external circumstances feel unpredictable. Even relationships benefit from nostalgia. Couples who reminisce about their early days together often experience increased closeness and intimacy. Families that retell shared stories build stronger bonds across generations. In fact, shared nostalgia creates what psychologists call collective resilience, a group's ability to withstand hardship by drawing strength from a common past. Think of cultural traditions, national histories, or family legacies. They are all forms of collective memory designed to preserve identity and inspire continuity. When you feel part of that story, you feel stronger. But nostalgia is not only about comfort. It is also a catalyst for growth. One of the most overlooked functions of memory is its role in motivation. When you recall times of joy, accomplishment, or meaningful connection, those memories act as blueprints for what you want to create again. They spark a hunger to relive those emotional states, and that desire can fuel forward action. For example, remembering the pride of completing a difficult project may push you to embrace new challenges. Recalling the warmth of a childhood gathering might inspire you to nurture deeper relationships in adulthood. Nostalgia, then, becomes a bridge, transforming the past into motivation for the future. At a deeper level, nostalgia also sharpens self-understanding. By revisiting old memories, you uncover recurring themes in your life story. Perhaps a constant desire for exploration, a need for connection, or a drive to create. These patterns reveal the psychological DNA of your personality. And once you recognize them, you can consciously align your goals with your authentic self. This is why therapists often guide patients to revisit formative memories, not to get stuck in them, but to decode the underlying values and beliefs that still drive behavior today. There's an interesting paradox here. Nostalgia can highlight what is missing in the present, making you feel a sense of loss. Yet, that very sense of loss can clarify what you truly value. If you miss the playfulness of childhood, it may be your psyche urging you to bring more joy into your current life. If you long for the courage of your younger self, it may be an invitation to rediscover bravery now. In this way, nostalgia doesn't chain you to past. It points you toward what your future needs most. Modern neuroscience adds another layer of insight. When you recall nostalgic events, the brain activates not only memory circuits but also reward pathways associated with dopamine. This chemical surge explains why nostalgia feels good, why it produces warmth, and why it can boost motivation. It's not just remembering. It's re-experiencing a slice of emotional richness that energizes you in the present moment. Imagine nostalgia as a portable battery pack. Whenever life drains your energy, you can recharge by reconnecting with memories that once lit you up. So, let's return to the question we began with. If memories shape who we are, can we use them to shape who we want to become? The answer is yes. Nostalgia, when engaged consciously, becomes a psychological tool. It can heal wounds, strengthen identity, deepen relationships, inspire growth, and fuel resilience. But like any tool, it depends on how you use it. If you merely escape into the past, nostalgia becomes an anchor that holds you back. But if you draw lessons, strength, and clarity from your memories, nostalgia transforms into a compass, pointing you toward the best version of your future self. But here's another layer to reflect on. If memories have the power to strengthen our identity and resilience, how exactly do they guide the construction of our future self? The answer lies in the way the brain uses memory not only as an archive of what's been, but as a rehearsal space for what can be. When you recall a moment from your past, your brain doesn't simply replay it like a movie clip, it reconstructs it. In fact, neuroscience shows that every act of remembering is also an act of reshaping. The neural pathways that fire when you relive an experience are the same ones you use when you imagine your future. This means that memory and imagination are deeply intertwined. In other words, the way you remember yesterday directly influences the way you anticipate tomorrow. That is why psychologists often say, your future self is being drafted in the language of your past. Think about it. When you imagine achieving something meaningful, you rarely picture it in a vacuum. Instead, your mind borrows elements from old experiences, successes, failures, lessons, even emotions, and stitches them together into a future scenario. If you once felt the thrill of standing on a stage, your brain may reuse that memory to fuel the vision of yourself speaking to thousands in the future. If you once overcame rejection, that recollection becomes the raw material for the courage you'll need in new challenges. Your brain doesn't invent futures from scratch. It builds them from the bricks of memory. This also explains why nostalgia can be such a powerful motivator. The longing we feel for certain moments is often a signpost of values we want to carry forward. For example, if you constantly find yourself reminiscing about the community spirit of your school days, it may be your psyche's way of telling you that belonging and collaboration are essential to your future happiness. If you miss the curiosity of your childhood, that nostalgia may be pointing you toward a future where learning and discovery play a central role. Memories, therefore, are not just echoes of the past. They are blueprints that help us design who we wish to become. But this process is not automatic. Left unchecked, our memories can also trap us. For instance, if someone repeatedly replays memories of failure or rejection without reframing them, those memories may shape a future filled with fear, self-doubt, and avoidance. This is where conscious engagement becomes crucial. The stories we tell ourselves about our past are the very narratives that create the architecture of our future identity. A memory of failure can either become a prophecy of more failures or a testimony of resilience that guides us to rise stronger. The difference lies in interpretation. That is why reflective practices, such as journaling, therapy, or even mindful nostalgia, are so valuable. When you intentionally revisit your memories, you gain the opportunity to reinterpret them. Instead of seeing a painful past as a wound, you can see it as wisdom. Instead of idolizing a joyful past as something lost, you can view it as inspiration for what is still possible. This shift in perspective transforms nostalgia from passive longing into active design. Consider how often we return to family stories or cultural traditions. They are not just tales of what happened. They are templates for identity. A child who grows up hearing about a grandparent's perseverance during hardship may internalize that memory as part of their own self-concept, even without having lived through it. This is what psychologists call narrative identity, the internalized life story that gives us a sense of continuity and direction. Memories, both personal and collective, are the raw material of this narrative, and as the narrative evolves, so too does our sense of who we are becoming. Interestingly, memory is selective. We don't recall everything. We remember what has emotional weight. This selectivity is not a flaw. It is a feature. The fact that certain memories stand out is itself a message. These moments matter to us. They carry lessons and meaning that we are unconsciously trying to preserve. And when we pay attention to those memories, we begin to see patterns. What you repeatedly recall reveals the themes of your life, and those themes are the foundation of your future self. Let's take an example. Suppose someone constantly remembers the joy of helping a friend in need. That memory might resurface not because it was random, but because it reflects a deep inner value of compassion. If that person listens closely to their nostalgia, they may realize that their future fulfillment lies in roles that allow them to serve, guide, or heal others. In this way, nostalgia functions like an internal compass. It points you toward a life that resonates with your deepest values. At the same time, nostalgia reminds us that identity is not fixed. It is fluid. Just as we reinterpret our memories, we also evolve our self-image. The future self you are becoming is not a stranger. It is a continuation, a remix of everything you've been. And by consciously engaging with your memories, you are effectively choosing which elements of your past you want to carry forward and which you want to leave behind. So, how do memories shape your future self? They do so by providing the raw material for imagination, by revealing your deepest values, by anchoring your resilience, and by guiding your choices. Every nostalgic reflection is an invitation. Will you let this memory confine you, or will you let it refine you? Will it serve as a cage, or as a compass? The truth is, you are always becoming, and the past you carry with you is not dead weight. It is clay. Every memory you hold is a piece of that clay, waiting to be reshaped into sculpture of your future. The more consciously you engage with it, the more deliberate you can be about who you are becoming. But there's a final question we need to confront. If nostalgia and memory have such power to shape identity and guide the construction of the future self, then how can we use this awareness deliberately instead of letting it happen unconsciously? Because whether we realize it or not, we are all storytellers of our own lives. The challenge is whether we write that story with intention or let old memories write it for us. One of the most powerful insights from psychology is that memory is not only reconstructive, but also directive. This means that the way you remember something influences the decisions you make next. For example, if you recall your childhood as filled with warmth, support, and encouragement, you may grow into an adult who seeks to recreate those same qualities in your relationships and work. On the other hand, if your memories are framed around absence, struggle, or betrayal, they can unconsciously nudge you toward fear, withdrawal, or mistrust unless you learn to reinterpret them. So the first step in shaping your future self through memory is awareness. You must become conscious of the stories you are telling yourself. Ask, what are the memories I revisit most often? Do I see them as sources of strength or as evidence of limitation? The answer to that question is not trivial. It determines whether your future self will be a product of possibility or fear. Here's the empowering truth. You don't have to be a passive consumer of your memories. You can be an active editor. Just as an author revises a manuscript, you can revise a narrative you carry about your past. You cannot erase what happened, but you can change what it means. A memory of being excluded in childhood, for instance, could either become a lifelong wound, or it could become the seed of empathy that drives you to create inclusion for others. The event is the same, but the meaning is different, and that difference shapes who you become. Another step is to practice intentional nostalgia. Instead of drifting into memories only when they randomly surface, you can choose to revisit them with purpose. Set aside time to reflect on moments when you felt alive, purposeful, or deeply connected. Ask yourself, what was it about that experience that mattered most? Was it freedom? Was it love? Was it creativity? Then carry that essence forward as a guide for future decisions. By doing this, you transform nostalgia from a longing for the past into a strategy for the future. There's also a social dimension to this process. Our memories are not only personal, they are collective. Family stories, cultural traditions, and even national histories all shape how we see ourselves and what futures we imagine possible. If you grow up in a culture that remembers itself through resilience, you inherit resilience. If you grow up in one that remembers itself through victimhood, you inherit limitation, unless you consciously reframe it. This is why it matters to share stories of strength, growth, and healing. By retelling empowering memories, we expand the future selves available to us, both individually and collectively. But here lies the paradox. While nostalgia can guide us, we cannot live in it. If you only dwell on the past, you risk becoming trapped in what psychologists call rosy retrospection, a longing for something that no longer exists while missing the opportunities unfolding in the present. The true power of nostalgia is unlocked only when it fuels action. A memory of childhood curiosity should inspire you to learn something new today. A memory of belonging should motivate you to create community now. Without that bridge into the present, nostalgia is just a dream you can't wake from. So the practical question is, how do you integrate memory into the active shaping of your future self? Begin with reflection, then move into application. Journaling, meditation, or therapy are tools to surface and reinterpret memories. Vision boards, goal setting, or simply daily habits are the bridges that carry those insights into lived reality. If you recall that your happiest times were when you were creating art, then commit to painting again, not just reminiscing about it. If you recall that your greatest pride came from helping others, then structure your career or daily acts of kindness around that truth. Nostalgia becomes transformation when memory inspires action. And here's perhaps the most liberating realization. Your future self is not fixed. You are not bound to repeat your past, even though your past provides a material. Every day, you are authoring new memories that your future self will revisit. The way you live today is the memory you will inherit tomorrow. This means that shaping your future self is not only about reinterpreting old stories, it's about creating new ones. What if you treated every moment right now as a gift you are giving to your future self? Would you not live with more presence, more care, and more courage? So the ultimate lesson is this. Nostalgia is not just a window into what was. It is a mirror reflecting what still matters. And it is a compass pointing toward what could be. By becoming aware of how memories shape you, by choosing to reinterpret them with wisdom, and by acting on the values they reveal, you take authorship of your future self. And perhaps this is the deepest truth. The past does not define you. It refines you. Every memory you carry is clay. Every reflection a sculptor's hand. And every choice you make today is another stroke shaping who you are becoming. If you embrace nostalgia with intention, you are no longer a prisoner of your past. You are a co-creator of your future. So, what does all of this mean for you? Nostalgia is not just a sweet ache for the past. It is a reminder, a teacher, and a guide. It shows you where you came from, what shaped you, and what still matters most in your heart. Every memory you hold, whether it brings joy or pain, carries within it the seeds of who you are becoming. You are not simply the sum of your past experiences. You are the author who decides what they will mean and how they will shape the story of your future self. Remember this. Your past is not a prison. It is a blueprint. The warmth you once felt, the lessons you once learned, the struggles you once endured, they can all be fuel for the person you are still building. Every day, you are creating new memories that your future self will inherit. The question is, what kind of inheritance do you want to leave for yourself? Here is the invitation. Do not let nostalgia remain a passive feeling. Use it as a tool, a compass, a spark. Reflect on the moments that mattered, reinterpret the ones that hurt, and act on the values that emerge. When you do this, you will not only honor your past, you'll transform it into a living bridge toward your best possible future. And now, I ask you to take one small but powerful step. Pause after this speech. close your eyes and recall one memory that still lives inside you. Ask yourself, what is it teaching me? How can I use it to shape the person I am becoming? Then, commit to one action today that honors that truth. Because in the end, nostalgia is not just about who you were. It is about who you choose to be. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to join me on this journey of exploring psychology, memory, and the hidden forces shaping our lives. Subscribe to Whispers of Psychology, share this video with someone who needs it, and let's continue building a community where our stories don't just live in the past, but create a better future together. Your future self is waiting. Let's shape it intentionally.